Hello guys, welcome to Benanti TV. My name is Mr. Benanti. Thank you for always watching our videos. Thank you for watching this particular one. In our previous video, we looked at the various events that resulted in the downfall of Egypt. Today's video, we are going to talk about the particular pharaoh that God through Moses rescued Egyptians from slavery. So in Exodus, which talked about the events that occurred before Israelites were released. So the particular pharaoh that was there at that time, we are going to try to identify such a pharaoh. So stay tuned, then let's go and fish that pharaoh out.
Most people associate the Egyptian ruler that was forced to free enslaved Israelites with the name Ramses. Films such as The Ten Commandments, The Prince of Egypt, Exodus, God and Kings have all made their assumptions regarding the biblical book of Exodus. The Bible itself gives no name for this pharaoh. Ultimately, his exact identity is irrelevant. The anonymity might even be deliberate. Egyptian monarchs were famously invested in how they will be remembered. Obscurity would be an ironic judgment on a such ruler. Identifying the Egyptian head of state who interacted with Moses is more than challenging. History and archaeology offer a dizzying combination of clues, possibilities, and problems. Simply estimating the date of Israel's release is easier said than done, and even then, comparing it to the reigns of Egyptian rulers is not enough. Ancient Egyptian history is notoriously erratic and unreliable. Archaeologists note how Egyptian records often overlap, containing contradictory dates and leaves out major historic events. This is especially true of records of events unflattering to a pharaoh. Reliable information from that era is relatively scarce and subject to interpretations. Even determining which dynasty ruled over the Jewish slaves is a thorny puzzle and more complex than simply comparing Egyptian records to non-Egyptian records. To harmonize the book of Exodus, Egyptian history, and secular archaeology, it is necessary to be open-minded about potential days for the events recorded in all three sources. The challenges of ancient historical research make it impossible to say for certain which pharaoh are described in the book of Exodus. At the same time, available evidence supports the biblical Exodus as a real historic event. That is to say, a literal region of Exodus is plausible, though specific events are unlikely to be provable. The open question involves details that are not crucial to either the truth or overall message of what is recorded in the Bible. Assumptions used to date the Exodus greatly influence theories about which pharaoh was involved. The two leading theories are 1446 BC and 1225 BC, known respectively as early and the late dates. The early date, 1446 BC, derived from a semi-literal reading of 1 Kings chapter 6 verse 1 and Judges 12 verse 26, and is the most often accepted date among biblical scholars. Minority voices suggest options such as an interim date or even an entirely new approach to Egyptian chronology. The late date for the Exodus, that is 1225 BC, suggests the timeline of 1 Kings chapter 6 is symbolic, perhaps representing generations as a multiple of 12. Some archaeological evidence support this late view, including the evidence of conquest in the cities of Canaan. The general alignment of these theories implies that Pharaoh Seti I drove Israel into deeper slavery, and Ramses II was the pharaoh defeated in the days of Moses. Yet, Ramses is recorded in Exodus as the name of a city. We can see this in Exodus chapter 1 verse 11. Notably, The pharaoh who ruled in the early chapters of Exodus was dead by the time Moses returned to free Israel. You can see this in Exodus chapter 2 verse 21 to 23. Thus, those who hold to a late Exodus suggest Ramses II may have been Israel's early oppressor, and his son Meneptah would have ruled during the Exodus itself. The 1446 BC date would align Exodus' early events with the time of Thutmose I or his father Amenhotep I, either of whom are considered capable of issuing a decree to murder infants. Exodus chapter 1 verse 16 to 21. This dating would place Moses' life in the same general time frame as Hatshepsut, effectively a female pharaoh who may have been the one to adopt him from the Nile. Hatshepsut's co-regent and eventual rival was Thutmose III, who apparently resented her influence and would have had good reasons to banish Moses at the first opportunity. Staying with mainstream Egypt chronology would make Amenhotep II 7th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, the ruler who was forced to let God's people go. Egyptian history indicates a sudden lack of military action by Amenhotep II beginning in 1446 BC, a fact that would be consistent with the loss of nearly the entire army at the Red Sea. This can also be seen in Exodus 14:21. Ancient records also claim Amenhotep's successor, Thutmose V, was not the true heir, which would be true if Amenhotep's firstborn son and legitimate heir died during the 10th plague. For those reasons, biblical interpreters are most likely to identify Amenhotep II as the pharaoh of the Exodus. That opinion is hardly universal, however, and by no means free of challenges. Some scholars argue for tweaks in our understanding of Hebrew history, changing the presumed date of the Exodus to a time between the early and late options, such as the 1300s BC. According to one such theory, the infamous pharaoh Tutankhamun, pop culture's king Tut, could have been the one confronted by Moses and defeated by God's miracle. Some archaeologists have suggested that the mainstream view of Egyptian chronology is greatly inaccurate. They point to various anomalies and inconsistencies which can be easily explained by adjusting the dates of the Egyptian dynasties by as much as several hundred years. While this view is not accepted by most Egyptologists, it is not entirely dismissed. If the dates of the Egyptian dynasties are shifted, Neferhotep I emerges as a possible pharaoh of the Exodus. Neferhotep was the ruler during the 13th dynasty, and his predecessor, Amenemhat III, had no surviving sons. Amenemhat's childless daughter, Subek-Neferu, possibly the princess of Exodus, marked the sudden end of the 12th dynasty. Neferhotep's reign is associated with the Ipowa Papyrus, a record of an era of calamity within Egypt. Further, he was succeeded by his brother Subak-Hotep IV rather than by his son Neferhotep. Notably, Neferhotep did not leave behind mummified remains, perhaps indicating that he was a victim of the incident at the Red Sea. Soon after his reign, a people group known as the Hyksos conquered much of Egypt, consistent with what would happen to a nation newly weakened by the decimation of its army. The most popular theory is that Amenhotep II was the pharaoh of the Exodus, but no theory is ironclad. All have their weakness and unanswered questions, as well as relative advantages and supportive evidence. It's important to note that these varied possibilities are not themselves the only extra biblical evidence supporting the book of Exodus, dated within the broad sweep of centuries during which the Exodus might have occurred. Numerous discoveries stand out. Depending on dating assumptions, any or all of these could be directly associated with the Exodus of Israel from Egypt. Now let's look at these recoveries. Mud and straw bricks are featured in some pyramids, which is consistent in Exodus 5 verse 7. A fact congruent with writings and other evidence of Asiatic people enslaved in Egypt. Objects described as rod or staff used by court advisors which look like snakes have been discovered, which is also consistent in Exodus 7 verse 10 to 12. The Apua papyrus depicts a time of trouble in Egypt. Plague stalked through the land and blood is everywhere, but the river is blood. Gates, columns and walls are consumed with fire. The sons of the highborn man is no longer to be recognized. The stranger people from outside are coming to Egypt, but corns have perished everywhere. So this record, a tablet written with this information is discovered, which is consistent with the template as described in Exodus. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of a large slave town, Kahun, which shows evidence of hasty desertion, including the abandonment of household possessions and implements, which is consistent in the people of Israel moving hastily after Pharaoh allowed them to leave. This same area, Kahun, is the site of mass infant burial, which is consistent in the decree given by Pharaoh to have all infants of Egyptians killed, as seen in Exodus chapter 1 verse 16. Cities in Canaan show evidence of warfare consistent with the conquest depicted in books such as Joshua. Now the big question is, who then was the Pharaoh of the Exodus? It was unlikely to have been Ramses, despite Hollywood's fondness for that figure. Most likely it was Amenhotep II, the 7th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, but it might also have been Neferhotep I of the 13th dynasty, or less probably Tutankhamun. There isn't enough details to positively identify that ruler, and that may have been God's plan all along. There is ample evidence, however, to trust what depicted in the book of Exodus as true.
Thank you for watching the video. If you have enjoyed it, do well to subscribe to our channel so that we can grow and then keep on giving you content that you love. See you on another one. Peace out.